Well, my spiritual awakening actually happened when I was 22, and I was studying in England at the time at Lancaster University. And when I was in England, a lot of students that I was, in school with or in class with, English students, were talking about their trips to India that they had taken. And so I was just, absorbing this and listening to this, and I'd already taken a trip to the Middle East, so I was looking for another adventure in a sense that I was going to take over my Easter break. And then this idea came to me one day to go to India on a spiritual quest. And so, it was really strong intuition or an intuitive impulse, so I, made the plans, I bought the ticket, I went to India, and then I landed in Bombay. And then on the train out of Bombay, right away I met this man on a train. We had this conversation. He was from India, and he invited me to his village in this small province of Goa, and he said there's a spiritual teacher there, and he interprets dreams like Joseph of the Old Testament. And that was kind of the, to me, the selling point. I was like, ooh, that sounds pretty good. I think I need to go check this out. And so I get off the train and I meet up with this man, and then he introduced me to the spiritual teacher. His name was Jason. Actually, Goa was the Portuguese had landed there back in the 1400s, so almost all the Goans were Catholic and they spoke perfect English. So it was this really interesting part of India. And so his name was Jason, and spoke perfect English, had traveled around the world, and he invited me actually to stay at his place. And so I was just planning to be there for a couple days, kind of check it out, see if there's anything he had to share with me. And I ended up staying for a few more days, and a few more days, and I ended up being there for 5 weeks actually. And ultimately, it was this kind of a smaller village in this province of India. And, it was, in a sense, as I tell people, I went native, there was like, the only water you get was the water you pulled out of the ground in a bucket. So I would lower a bucket into the water, into the well, pull the water out. That's what I drank, and I bathed with that. And in India, no, there's no toilet paper. So this was my toilet paper for 5 weeks right here. Kind of a funny joke is it's like I really got in touch with myself in India in a new way. So, but anyways, eating their food, drinking the water. It was the hottest month of the year. It was in May, and so it was, every afternoon it was, 110 plus. So we'd just nap in the afternoon, lay on these reed mats in the veranda. And so, over the course of this time, he wasn't really sharing a lot, like here's sacred text, or here is, this, any type of teaching like that, like a formal teacher. It was just a matter of how he was being. One thing of interest was, every day he would climb into this tree right off the veranda, this bigger tree, and there was a pretty big sized branch, and he would sit in this branch and meditate. And as he shared with me, later on, he said, the reason I go up in this tree and meditate is because as I sit in this branch, I have to have a high level of awareness. And if my awareness drops off, then I might fall out of the tree. So this tree is like facilitates a high level of awareness. So as he's meditating, he can be in that level. And then probably, almost towards the end of the stay, we were, sitting around the fire one night. We just finished eating, and there was a group of us, and he started sharing this story about this journey we take as human beings, actually our souls in a sense. And it's this journey we take that consists of traveling across 7 planets, and Earth being the first planet. And then so as we're on Earth, we go through our spiritual journey, and as our soul evolves, as the consciousness expands, when it expands to a certain level, we go to the next planet. And then you go to the next planet, you continue this expansion, and then finally you end up on the largest planet in the universe, and on this planet is the largest mountain in the universe. And as soon as he said the largest mountain in the universe, it was like I was transported, and I was standing on the side of this mountain. And when I first looked around and kind of got my bearings, it seemed like I was about halfway up. And yet this mountain was so high, I was so high up in elevation that I could actually see the planet rotating in space like I was in low orbit. And this planet was pure white, and it was vibrating with such intensity that chunks of the planet were flying off it into space, and I could sense it, feel it, and I was on this mountain, rotating, in a sense, watching it rotate in space, and then I was back at the fire again. And when I had this experience, it was like I had traveled, in a sense, like I had an out-of-body experience. That's how real it felt. And it seemed like such an out-of-this-world experience that it was years before I even told somebody else that I had gone through this. And yet actually, that experience was so impactful. And then that whole experience, the 5 weeks I stayed in this village in India was so impactful. When I got back to India, there was this immense awakening, this immense joy, this immense state of bliss. I was like bathing in a pool of bliss. It was so amazing. And then, as years went on, again, I didn't really share this story because it seemed just kind of a little odd. And then it was only recently, actually, in the last couple of years, that I had this, it was last spring, in the spring of 2008, when Oprah and Eckhart were doing their webinar, I had this insight that it wasn't actually an external expansion or an external, I didn't travel anywhere externally, it was an internal expansion. And then how my body and how my brain interpreted this experience, this deep shift, this deep internal shift, was it created this visual, because he was sharing that story, and that's the visual it was matching to try and simulate what it was I was experiencing. So I had this profound spiritual shift when I was in India that really has grounded me the rest of my life since then. And even though I've had episodes with the ego since then also, because I've been through this divorce, but it really was such a profound shift, and a profound shift at the deepest level of who I was, that is still with me today, this state of presence that I was anchored into. So that was my spiritual awakening in India.